Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining this this series, I guess, this track, and welcome to the Windows 11 Bootcamp. We're going to help to ease your transition to Windows. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Amy Troxell, Senior Mobility Team Manager for SHI. I have responsibility for managing some of the largest partners that we have in the tech industry today, including Windows OEM devices, silicon partners, the whole category of extended reality, as well as we're starting SHI's esports practice. So I've been with SHI for over 19 years now, almost 20 next month, and have responsibility for supporting the mobility department for over a decade now. So very exciting. In this session, as I said, we'll attempt to ease your transition to Windows 11. And as organizations gear up for this exciting update, our mission here is to empower you with the right knowledge and tools to be able to help to go through this transition effortlessly. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Rob McGilvrey. He's America Specialist for Microsoft. He has supported Microsoft for over 4 years now, but he's been supporting the B2B tech industry since 2006. He's a strategic-minded leader and been supporting the tech industry for over 16 years with his expertise in commercial, education, and government, as well as healthcare markets. So thank you, Rob, for being here as part of this session.
No, thanks. Thanks for having me back again. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. And so I have some prepared questions here for Rob, but we'll have time at the end to take some of your questions. So as we go along, if there's something that reminds you of a hurdle that you're having in your own environment, we'll save time for you at the end to ask those questions while we have our expert here. Awesome. So we've been talking a lot about AI today. It's just kind of like the phrase that's on everybody's lips, right? It's exciting to talk about, but I wanted to ask you, outside of AI, what are like the 2 to 3 compelling reasons that you see for organizations to want to transition to Windows 11?
Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest one is security. I didn't touch too much on security in the session a little bit ago, but we are bringing in new features into the Windows 11 OS from a security perspective. One, we talked about earlier that end users are really the biggest security risk for any organization. A lot of those cyber attacks are end user initiated, and so we have a new feature in Windows 11 called Enhanced Phishing and Protection with Microsoft Defender Smart Screen. Don't try to say that 10 times fast. I'm not a product naming person, but really what this is this is a new feature that actually sits at the OS level, works across any supported browser, so even Chrome, Google Chrome browser. So if an end user visits a site or an application that's actually been flagged with Microsoft as being malicious, we will actually proactively ping that end user and say, hey, look, we think you inserted your credentials into something malicious. We think you should go ahead and go through a password reset request. So we're trying to be proactive and really think about security from a proactive perspective in Windows 11. We're also focused on, we did raise the base hardware requirements, requiring TPM 2.0, so we could turn on things like virtual-based security, the hypervisor, so we could make sure that we're protecting the core of the device. And I think it's really exciting what we're doing with Pluton and our partnership with all of our silicon partners to now integrate the Microsoft security processor directly on the chip. So I'd say security is a big one. Outside of Windows 10 going into support here in 16 months, I do hear a lot from customers that end users love Windows 11. We see that the Net Promoter Scores are increasing over Windows 10 by about 13 or 14 points. We actually see that end users are actually spending more time in Windows 11 versus a Windows 10 PC. And a lot of that has to do with, it's more modern looking. But the other big piece of it is that it's still familiar, right? Things are kind of still in the same locations. It is an updated UI, and we are bringing in all those new features that I talked about earlier. And so for me, I think those are really the big things, is really around security, and that end users really want a new modern looking operating system. And in full transparency, Windows 10 was probably a little stale looking, if I'm being honest, right? Great OS, but definitely the update to the UX is something that definitely, we hear a lot of good feedback on.
A little facelift, right?
Yeah.
As you say, end users seem to be liking Windows 11. So can you speak a bit about what is different from a hardware-based perspective?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is we did, raise the base hardware requirements, obviously making TPM 2.0 a requirement to run Windows 11. We also, older processors are not going to be compatible. So we mentioned earlier as we kind of look at some of the insights that we can see, 8th generation and newer Intel processors are usually eligible 7th gen and younger aren't. And so, we did raise those hardware requirements because we want to deliver the best end user experience. But really at the core of why we did raise some of those hardware requirements was really around security. And then when we think about Copilot Plus PC, making 16 gigs of RAM, a 256 hard drive, and then this new NPU is a requirement so we can light up those experiences, but also leverage, the platform to make sure that we are delivering that, that best experience out of the box.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. To go along with that, what tools and resources is Microsoft providing to help organizations assess their readiness, right? So you're already talking about some of the hardware, capabilities that we need to have to make sure that we are ready for Windows 11. But if they don't have that, right, or if they need help getting there, or if they have an app that's not compatible, what are some of the resources they can tap into?
Yeah, so on the device side, we have quite a few resources. I mentioned some of these earlier. So if you're still in Configuration Manager today, SCCM, we've actually created a PowerShell script that you can go and download and actually query your devices, and it'll give you a report back that says whether or not the device is eligible, and then it will also give you a reason code as to why it's not eligible. So it'll provide a reason back. If you're in Modern Management, Intune, whether it's co-managed or cloud native, we have a report. It's kind of hidden in Intune. It's in Endpoint Analytics. It's called Work From Anywhere. Then there's a Windows tab, and you can actually go in and actually see of your devices which ones have upgraded, which ones are eligible, which ones are not eligible, and it will also give you a reason as to why that device is not eligible. Then, we do see for smaller organizations too, maybe if they don't have those or potentially a third-party tool, there is a PC health check app that end users can always download from the Microsoft Store, and it will quickly click one button and it'll quickly tell them whether or not, their PC is eligible to upgrade. That's not really as scalable as Intune or an SCCM script, but we do have different flavors out there to really help assess that. And then, from app compatibility perspective, I think this is still probably the biggest thing. I think a lot of this is rooted probably in to be very transparent. The 7 to 10 migration was not great. Companies experienced a lot of app compatibility issues. Even in our insights, we still see Windows 7 devices active. Hopefully nobody else has any Windows 7 devices active, right? But there are some use cases where, legacy applications just didn't work on 10 until they kept 7 alive. But as I mentioned, this is a feature update. Windows 11 is a feature update. Could have easily just still been called Windows 10. It's an in-place upgrade, and it is using the same kernel. And so when we think about app compat, we're at about a 99.7% app compatibility rate between Windows 10 and 11. We also have what's called our Microsoft Aperture Promise. I don't know if you're aware of this. If you're not, please familiarize yourself with this program. So we actually have a promise in place where we say we guarantee that if you have an application running on Windows 10 today, that it will run on Windows 11. In your testing, if you encounter any compatibility issues, this team of engineers will get involved free of charge to help you remediate why that application that's running on 10 today does not run on 11. We also hear from customers that testing has gone really well with Windows 11, but their app providers are not stating that they'll support that application running on version of Windows 11. Our Aperture team also wants to get involved with those ISVs as well to say, okay, look, we've tested it, it works. Why are you not comfortable and confident to tell your customers that you'll support it running on that version of Windows 11? And so this team works very closely with a lot of the app providers as well, just to make sure that everyone is comfortable and confident from an app perspective, that the transition will be smooth.
It's nice to know that Microsoft will go at bat, for the software providers to be like, let's move things along, right? Let's make sure that we're ready for Windows 11. That's good to know that we have a free resource to, be able to take advantage of. So to go along with the tools and resources that you mentioned, what are some of the deployment and communication strategies that you've seen customers use in their migration from Windows 10 to 11?
Yeah, I would say the biggest creative one, and I don't know if everyone's familiar with this feature or not, but if you're leveraging Intune today and you have Windows 11 Enterprise, there's actually a new feature called templated messaging. I don't know if you're familiar with this feature or not in Intune, and it is exclusive to Windows 11 Enterprise. But you can actually send messages, and you can actually set up a cadence of messages to be delivered directly to the end user's desktop. And so speaking with a few customers, what they've done is they've taken this templated messaging and say, okay, once the PC updates, if they're doing the in-place upgrade, they receive a message directly on the desktop that says, hey, look, this is, your IT team's reaching out. You updated your PC from 10 to 11. Here's what's changed. If you want to change your taskbar back over to the left, here's how you go do that setting. Then from there, they actually send out tidbits of communication. Some of these can be like pop up directly on the desktop. Some can go in the notification area, in the little message notification area. And so, we see customers being really creative to say, hey, look, after you've transitioned, let's continue to deliver information. Do you know about some of these new features that we talked about that can really help, increase end user productivity? And so it's really cool to see some of those communication strategies. And then as far as like a deployment strategy, you can really follow the same cadence as you have today for your Windows servicing model. As you guys have developed strategies, I'm sure, to start testing, different feature updates, maybe with a certain subset of early adopters, and then you look at certain rings for deployment. And so you can follow that same strategy, with Windows 11 and that transition from 10 to 11.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know that SHI transition to Windows 11. I know you're part of that. So just to speak a little bit as an end user, of that, some of the communication strategies that we saw. I mean, to be honest, I think there was very little communication, and we knew what was happening, right? Especially our Microsoft team that's dedicated to Microsoft. We knew what the user interface was going to be like, so it was easy to be an early adopter of that because there wasn't going to be many surprises. But I think we got an email on like a Thursday, and then we're told like that following Monday, you're in that user group that's going to be testing Windows 11. You're going to be one of the early on adopters of it. And so got an email. Great. Okay, I have some calls on that Monday. So my first call, I think it was at like 10 o'clock. So it was just make sure I log in early enough to make sure the upgrade happens. I think they said to allow for half an hour to an hour, I guess, just to give like plenty of time, just in case there was any. There was no issues whatsoever. I logged in the morning on probably 8:30 on that Monday, and it was seamless. I logged in with my credentials. I literally saw every application being updated in real time. The menu at the bottom, the start menu moved to the center. I saw the Microsoft Bloom, which is apparently the official term if you didn't know. The Bloom desktop, changed, and it was done. But I think the funny thing is that it was a seamless transition for me, but it fixed some problems that I didn't think it was going to fix for. Do you guys use the term fix-it-elves? When technology doesn't necessarily work the way that you want it to, and you got to restart your computer, and then sometimes you just need to like leave it alone, and when you come back, it fixes itself. I feel like Windows 11 has some fix-it-elves. So I was having some printer issues for about a year. I was having my marketing person print things for me because for whatever reason, IT, everybody tried to connect my printer. But once I went to Windows 11, all of a sudden I could print. So fix-it-elves in Windows 11, there you go. So, I know you were involved in our Windows 11 transition as well. So is there any kind of behind the scenes, perspective that you can offer about like our transition?
Yeah, I think, probably the biggest thing we hear, and we saw this a little bit, is sometimes legacy GPO policies that have been around for a long time can throw some weird behaviors with the OS. I think that was the biggest thing I think we encountered in your migration was during testing, a window was popping up where a user would have to press OK to be able to connect to the internet, and it was rooted in an old GPO policy. And when I talk with customers, a lot of them are like, hey, look, we've got potentially thousands of GPO policies that someone wrote years ago that have always been deployed to a certain user profile, and frankly, we don't know what they do. And so, I had one company I was talking to, and they're like, yeah, every day we're turning about 5 or 10 of them off, and we're just, looking at the help desk ticker to see if anything happens, and if it doesn't happen, then we know that it was a redundant GPO policy. So those are probably the biggest things, to be honest with you, is something maybe that's been in place from a legacy perspective that's no longer needed or redundant can potentially throw some errors. But I mean, we've got our team involved, and I will say kudos to you all. I mean, we hear on average, right, if you need to refresh devices, it could take upwards of 12 months to do a full transition, right? That includes getting leadership buy-in, that includes, doing your assessment, doing your testing, doing your POCs, right? It could take a process. But you guys did it in 3 months. So and we're here to help, right? The Windows side of the house at Microsoft is here to help every customer. Yes, you have benefits available to you, through services like Fast Track, but in this instance, we had our engineering team jump in really quickly because they want to know what's happening in this transition. They want to know what things are popping up, and so we're here to help. I think would be the biggest thing as well. SHI and Microsoft are here to help. Specifically on the Windows side, because we want it to be a smooth transition. And ultimately, we don't want anyone to have to pay for extended support. So, we don't want to take customers' money for that. So,
Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah.
great point. And I think the urgency on the SHI side was the quicker that we can get to Windows 11, and we can help our customers get there too. Like if we hadn't done it first, then it doesn't feel authentic, if we haven't made the migration ourselves. So I'm really excited that we had the backing and support to do that.
Yeah.
So the last question I have, and then we can open up for audience questions after this. It seems that there are new innovations coming out on Windows all the time. What are you most excited about from a feature set perspective?
Yeah, I think I would just say, for me, I think it's the art of the possible. I think it's the stuff that's going to be coming in the next 18 to 24 months, really around how we're partnering with the vast, ecosystem of ISVs to start integrating AI models into their applications, and then how can those applications leverage an NPU, to do a lot of things, right? I kind of put it in two buckets, really. One is like, hey, what could we do in partnership maybe with a security company to take those security agents off the CPU and put them over to the NPU, which improves end user satisfaction and improves the performance of the CPU on the device. But then like, hey, now that I'm sitting over here in this NPU and I've got an AI model, like what are the new features that we can do? Like what are some of the things that we can be consistently doing in the background? I think for me, I think security is one of the biggest things that jumps out. I was actually sharing this with a customer earlier. I was talking with a security provider, and they have an app that customers really want. It's looking for sensitive information as documents flow through the organization or be sent out, to like redact that information if potentially, protecting against an end user error scenario. And they're like, customers want this, but it sits on the CPU right now today, and it really degrades the overall performance, so they turn it off because they get a ton of help desk tickets on like, hey, my PC's running slow. And they were thinking, okay, wow, now could I think about how I put AI into this application that I know there's demand for? Then I can move it over to the NPU. I can enhance the feature capabilities of that application, and it can always be running while not degrading the end user experience with the CPU across the entire system. And so, this is a journey. I know we've heard that, right? This whole new era of devices with AI on the edge is a journey. I think the Windows experiences that we're going to continue to innovate are cool, but I really think what we're going to see from our vast app community in the next 18 to 24 months, I think is going to be something that I'm really excited about, because then it really does, accelerate organizations to be more secure, to be more productive, and be more creative, leveraging, the AI capabilities directly on the PC.
Yeah, great point. So we have some time left. Has anybody thought of some questions? And if you do, we have a mic at the back of the room there if you want to ask any specific questions while we have Rob here. Any questions for you? No?
Who's on Windows 11? Anyone on the
Yeah.
Windows 11 yet? Yeah.
Hi.
Mhm.
I had a question around.
Oh,
Sorry, we'll get to you right next. Sorry. We'll
okay,
I
down here.
promise
We'll go
call
down
you
here and then
next.
here. All right.
I had a question around imaging when it comes to Windows 11. Is autopilot, really the way that you guys see is the way forward, or any plans for MDT or anything like that to be officially supported for Windows 11?
Yeah, I know. I get the MDT question a lot, and I've asked engineering a lot. It's not supported with Windows 11. I mean, obviously, we'd love to have every customer, get out of the image management business, right? Why manage a whole bunch of images across all the different models within your organization potentially, and move to that more modern management and really provisioning, right? Windows Pro and Windows Enterprise it's pretty much just unlocking the features with that subscription activation capability. So we'd obviously love for everyone to get to zero-touch deployment model, but we understand that that's not the case. You can still re-image Windows 11 devices and create custom images, but I know the MDT tool is something that always comes up in conversation. And so, but yeah, I mean, in an ideal state, we'd love for you guys to get out of imaging and managing those images. We feel like the servicing models, things with like auto patch and the stability of the OS, we feel like, more of a modern deployment and a modern servicing strategy is kind of more like your phone nowadays. Like you don't really think twice about updating your phone OS if you get an update. We feel really comfortable and confident that we're getting to that state from a Windows perspective that, when the latest and greatest comes out, you should just push it out so the end users can capitalize on those features. But if you're experiencing any challenges from an imaging perspective with Windows 11, please let us know. If there's specific things that you guys are seeing, we can definitely get our engineers involved to say, okay, like, what is this specific scenario? What is the roadblock that you're encountering? Because they want that, they want that feedback directly from our customer base, because they're not necessarily shielded from our customers, but they don't get to spend as much time as our with customers as our partners do. So if there's like a specific thing you're seeing from a Windows 11 imaging perspective, please let us know. We can get that team involved to figure it out. So we have it right here.
Yeah, the question is more for SHI. When you did the migration process, did you find devices that were not compatible with the newer version, and how did you manage that to still accomplish the goal in 3 months?
Yeah, I think majority of our devices were compatible, thankfully. So we've had a requirement for the TPM 2.0 chip for quite a while now. I think that helped a lot. I know initially, like when we're helping customers, sometimes organizations, it's like a nice to have. Now with Windows 11, it's a necessity, right? So I'm thankful that we did move to TPM 2.0 quite a while ago, a few years ago with the latest batches. I think we refreshed about 2 years ago. So those devices, they weren't that old, thankfully. So that definitely helped ease the transition. If we had identified people that weren't on, and I don't think there were many of them because it was a requirement for so long, we would have had to upgrade those devices, and it would have been a small pocket of users. So I think that helped a lot from a hardware-based protection, is that we had already kind of unknowingly, we're in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say it's the biggest thing. It's every organization is a little different. Some organizations may went through a recent refresh, and so they have a pretty good hardware-based requirements in their environment to be able to just push out feature updates, right, or an in-place upgrade. But we still do see, and a lot of that is rooted in that that COVID purchase cycle, where maybe your organization went outside of your standard. Your standard would have been fine to meet the Windows 11 base requirements, but since some deviations were made outside of the standard purchase and standard hardware requirements during that COVID period, whether an end user went to a Best Buy or just got something on Amazon, right? They just got whatever they could get their hands on. That's really where we start to see kind of a bulk of these issues, is some of those hardware purchases that are, in that 3 to 4 year window, that were maybe outside of the normal, way of procuring devices historically. So, but the ways to check are super easy, right? And SHI can help very quickly do that assessment, so you guys can get a good view into understanding, okay, what do I need to refresh, ahead of end of support, so I'm not incurring any, end of support costs.
Right.
All right. I have an NPU question.
Yeah.
Are the models already on the chip, and if so, what are they?
So from a developer perspective, we have what's called like Copilot Runtime. I don't know if you attended Build recently, but from like an app developer perspective, we have Copilot Runtime in about 40 small language models in the OS on these newer PCs, like the Copilot Plus PCs. But the way it's going to technically work is, so you'll have an AI model that an ISV will input into an application, okay? Then we have the Windows Scheduler. So the Windows Scheduler, and we talked a little bit about this at Build, and I'm trying to like simplify it. So the Windows Scheduler is going to look at the app and say, okay, you have an AI model, and I recognize that AI model that's on the app, right? And then now I know that AI model will run on the NPU. So things like today, like Stable Fusion runs on an NPU. And so it's like, okay, now the scheduler says, yes, you have AI. I recognize that you have AI. I recognize the model, and I know that model will run on the NPU. I'm then going to optimize it and move it over to the NPU. The biggest thing here, just to remember, is that the NPU, for the sake of the NPU, you can't just move stuff over to the NPU for the sake of the NPU, right? And the battery doesn't use the NPU. And so where you're really going to start to see significant gains is when you're taking those things that degrade battery life performance, as I talked about earlier, and you take those things that traditionally are running on a CPU, and now they have AI in them, and these ISVs are working with Microsoft and Windows to get the right models into those apps, and then push those over. And we'll continue to expand the AI models that Windows Scheduler recognizes. It's something we're continuing to work on. When it first launched, it was a little limited, but we're continuing to develop on, okay, what AI model are ISVs putting in those apps, and then can Windows recognize it and then move it over and put it over to the NPU because it makes sense to do so, right? Because the scheduler is there to really optimize the system. And so it's going to optimize it by moving it over when it recognizes the AI. But
Okay. So they're much smaller models than like a GPT-4.
Yeah. So like, for instance, when I was talking about like recall, right? Recall, this question came up the other day. Like, we have a large language model now that sits in the OS with this version for Copilot plus PCs. Well, if you think about a large language model and all the data that goes with it, they're massive, right? There's no way you could store that in an OS, right, on a PC, or you would need so much storage. It's just the model itself. It's not all the data that's attached with the model, right? And then you have the small language models that are there for developers to start leveraging and integrating into apps, and then working with the scheduler to be able to, move them over to the MPU. So it's a journey. So, I wish I could tell you like, hey, here's 80 apps today to do it, right? It's just not there, but I think it's really exciting about the possibility.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating and for the questions that you got here. This is great having an active audience.
One more back. Sorry, I have one more. How is Windows 11 playing with Active Directory versus Azure Active Directory on cloud?
So it operates the same way as it does in Windows 10. So, you can still be on-prem. Windows 11 will interact with AD on-prem. It's really, if you haven't started the transition, and when, like I said, I had hair before we called it Windows 11, right? I think I spent the first, year of my Windows 11 journey just trying to tell people, look, it is just a feature update. Someone in marketing wanted to call it Windows 11 because we like new numbers, right? Yes, it has new features and it has a new UX, but when you look at the core and the kernel and the way the OS behaves and interacts with, whether you're still on-prem with AD, whether you're going hybrid, Entra ID and Azure Active Directory in the cloud, like, it's going to behave the same way that Windows 10 behaves. And we always tell customers, look, you don't need to go acquire new tools. I think there was probably some confusion when we first launched Windows 11, because at the time we launched Windows 11, we also launched like an education version, like SE, that kind of came and gone. But that was dependent, like SE was dependent on Intune, like it was Intune only, where, I think there was some confusion that customers thought, okay, now with Windows 11, I need to be in Azure Active Directory. I need to be in Intune. Well, that's not the case, right? You can use the tools and the system and the infrastructure you have in place today, that the way you're managing 10 to manage 11. I've worked with global customers who've pushed out hundreds of thousands of updates through SCCM, with very little challenge, because they had a very good servicing strategy in place to push out those feature updates. So just want to provide that clarity. Now, we do see customers, I will say, we do see customers who are taking this moment in time to move to more modern management in a couple different ways, right? Some might be moving to co-management, hybrid. Some customers are saying, okay, eventually I know I want to get to 100% cloud managed. So any new PC that I deploy is going to be 100% Intune and Azure Active Directory, and the existing PC I'll keep in that co-management state until it's refreshed, right? And so we see customers doing a lot of creative things, and some are taking this moment to kind of modernize the management capabilities in their environment and take advantage of, some of the entitlements that are included with their M365 subscription. Intune is included in E3 and E5. And so, we do see customers taking this moment in time to kind of optimize their licensing as well as move modern with this Windows 11 moment. So.
Well, thank you, Rob, for helping us to demystify the transition to Windows 11.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for the participation that we had in the audience today. And I'd just like you to keep in mind, as you're going through your own transitions, you're not alone. SHI and Microsoft resources are here to help you. And if there were any additional questions that we didn't get to in this session, please let us know. We have folks that are ready to take your questions and your information. We can get back to you and answer those. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.